Just explain exactly what is going to be happening this weekend. And, of course, an awful lot of eyes in Wales will be on that date in August on which you could see the country moving to level 0.
OK, so from this Saturday, we're going to have a number of changes come in to move fully to alert level 1. That means that 6 people can meet up indoors in private homes and holiday accommodation. It means that organised indoor events can take place up to 1,000 seated and 200 standing. And our 2 ice rinks can reopen as well, although one of them is still being used as a vaccination centre. It also means children in groups of up to 30 are going to be able to visit children's residential centres together. There is, though, still a specific requirement to have the COVID risk assessment, and we've still got indoor social distancing until the 7th of August. That's when we see a more significant change being made. We're, though, moving to part of alert level 0 with outdoor events, not having a particular limit on those as well. So it's a significant step forward, and that is because whilst our case rates are high, they're 140 and 100,000, lowest in the UK, but still actually quite high. And you'll recall that it wouldn't have been that long ago, case rates of that number would have been going in reverse. We're not doing that because we've been really successful in rolling out our vaccination programme. That means that double dose people are much more protected, and we're not seeing the same level of harm come into our NHS. We've got 73% of adults in Wales having had both doses, and that's why we're looking forward to the 7th of August when we can release most of the remaining restrictions, and that's when nightclubs will be open here in Wales, for example. What we are doing, though, is we're keeping the requirements for face coverings to be worn in most public indoor settings. We think that's the right balance, both to prevent the potential spread of the virus, but also to give people some confidence. We've got lots of clinically vulnerable people who are concerned about the pace of movement out and whether they'll still be protected and able to enjoy the same freedoms as well.
What needs to happen, and indeed what needs not to happen between now and August the 7th for Wales to move to alert level 0? I note that you haven't described the process. The progress towards that date is irreversible.
No, because we've always been cautious and not wanting to give false hope. And the idea of absolutes through the COVID pandemic is not something that I think has actually lasted more than a few weeks. So we've always got to look at the public health position. That's both about case rates and harm coming into our NHS, and also if there's a new variant of concern circulating as well, because that on a regular point in time has changed our approach to the pandemic and how we keep Wales safe. In Wales, most people have done a really good job at all pulling together to keep Wales safe. We think that'll continue. The measures we're taking on face coverings, for example, it's a different set of measures being taken to England. So there's a need to make sure that people understand the rules for the country they're in if people are travelling in the UK. But I have seen your own piece, of course, where there are businesses in England calling for that greater clarity. So we think it's a very clear settlement that people can understand, rules that people can respect, and it's all part of us moving together to try to make sure we don't have to live with the restrictions we've all had to through the first part of the summer, and of course a really, really difficult winter that I certainly don't want to return to.
Yep, sure. I do wonder then, given the different advice from the devolved administrations in Wales and Scotland and that from Boris Johnson's government, I mean, are you concerned about compliance with mask wearing, given that there will be different situations in different parts of the United Kingdom?
Well, it's an obvious risk, and you've been talking about confusion in England this morning. We're asking people to understand the rules for the part of the United Kingdom they're visiting or undertaking business in. We want people to have a great summer visiting in Wales, but to respect the rules that are in force here as well. And actually, from the point of view of the businesses that are going to need to enforce those rules, I think it's much easier to give the clarity and the simplicity that these are rules. It's not a choice that they're opting in or opting out of. There's a requirement for face coverings to be worn in a variety of settings. And I hope that clarity will make it easier to avoid the confusion that might otherwise exist, but also for people to do the right thing. The last moment is people arguing about whether they need to wear a face covering in a shop.
Sorry to interrupt, Minister, but does that mean will there come a point at which the Welsh administration gives people in Wales the responsibility for making these decisions themselves?
Well, there may be a point in time, but it's not going to take place this summer, because we think that the clarity in the settlement that we've reached for indoor public spaces is the right balance of risk moving forward. We're not in a zero risk position now, even with the high levels of vaccination, with an expectation that by the 7th of August, 85% of adults would have had both vaccines. It's about the balance in those risks as ever. The settlement we've reached means there'll be more economic activity taking place, more freedoms for people to enjoy and to enjoy responsibly. And if we all keep on doing the right thing, then we can look forward to further freedoms and actually not going backwards to the position we've had to live through earlier on this year. But I just don't think it's helpful to try to forecast a point in time at which we may not need to wear face coverings. We're really looking to get to the end of this pandemic and to see a recovery undertaken that isn't going to be set back if we need to reimpose restrictions in the future.